I always start off by just sharing my story, because I think that, um, really gives people a greater appreciation for why I do this work. I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Boston. I'm a product of the Boston public school system. Born and raised in a single parent home where I was the oldest of four boys. Lost my brother to gang violence. Had no father growing up. And I had my first kid at the age of 15, and had no father growing up, not because he was dead or anything, just chose not to be a part of my life. Told my moms that, I wasn't his child. And, for me, I remember my mother sharing that with me. And I always said if I ever had kids, that my kids would never grow up without a father like I did. And having my son at the age of 15, obviously that became my why. But not having a father figure in my life, eventually led me to being involved in a lot of negativity that society has to offer a young man without the proper guidance or male role models. So I looked to the wrong male figures as role models growing up, and at that time I thought they were teaching me what was to be a man. But as I got older, found out that all that was a bunch of lies. And um, in high school, I tell people, not before high school, in middle school, I went to just about every middle school before I was kicked out because I was too old and gang affiliated. The story was the same once I got to high school. I was told that I'll be two places, dead or in jail. And in high school, I had a mentor who came into my life and saw something in me that I didn't see in myself at the time. And I remember him saying to me, listen, I want you to stop by my office, and talk to me. And I remember stopping by his office and him asking me a question. And he said, young man, what's your plan? And I said, I don't know. And he said, no, I said, when he asked me that question, he said, what's your plan? I said, well, when I leave here, um, I'm going to go outside, see the girls, then I'm going to go back around the way and hang out. He's like, no, what's your plan for life? and I was like, wow, I
Like
don't
that's
know.
deep. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, I don't know. And I remember him saying, remember this: those who fail to plan to fail. He said, those who fail to plan to fail. And it was that moment. He asked me. He said, "Do you have a job?" And I said, "No." He asked me if I wanted a job, and I said, "I would love one." And he said, "Where would you want to work?" I said, "I would love to work in an office setting." So he gave me my first real job. He gave me a job. He said, "I have the right job for you." He gave me a job in the financial district, which was working for Liberty Mutual, which was a partnership with Charlestown High School at the time. And I always remember Ed. His name is Ed Powell, by the way, and I often tell Ed that I owe him for helping me become the man that I am today. And Ed's thing is, you owe me nothing. Just do what I did for you for someone else, and pay it forward. So that's always stuck with me. Ed was the first black man that I saw in a suit and tie, excuse me, that I respected. Because prior to that, any black man that I saw in a suit and tie wasn't who I aspired to be. Because again, I told you my role models were, my uncles and friends from around the way who were, hanging on the corner. And I thought that's what it meant to be a man. And it wasn't until Ed came into my life that he showed me what it meant to be, a true man, what it meant to be a professional, what it meant to be a husband. He modeled all those things. And one of the things that really brought Ed and myself close was having Shawn Jr. At such an early age. Ed said, I want you to go to this father's program." And I said to Ed, I said, "Listen, Ed, out of respect for you, I'll go to the program. But one thing you never have to worry about is me not being there for my son." Uh, and it always stuck with that. That was my why. But I had a high school coach who helped me realize fast that the life that I was living, I was on my way to having my son grow up without a father like I did if I didn't change start to change my attitude and make some different decisions. So
Right. So
having
like
Ed,
you could like want to do something different, but that if your behavior remained the same, you wouldn't be,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely. You can talk about it, but I'm letting you know that your actions right now and the crowd that you're hanging with, I was going to lead you to being there with, leading your son to be growing up without a father. And that's one of the things that he said to me. He said, "Listen, there's a few things that, because this was a basketball coach now, so I shifted from Ed, but this was my high school coach. I played 1 year of high school basketball and I went to college on a 4-year basketball scholarship.
Wow.
And the conversation that I had with that high school coach was exactly that. He said, "Listen, I want you to play for me, but there's a few things you got to change: your grades, your friends, and your attitude." seemed easy, but it seemed easy, right? But it was tough.
That's a
That was my
lot. That's
life.
a major overhaul,
For
right?
for a young, absolutely, and think about that for a 15, 16 year old to say that's what you got to change and think about it. So, long story short, I didn't in that year, and I didn't play. He cut me. He cut me. I didn't make the team, and he didn't cut me because I wasn't good or anything. I was one of the best athletes in the school, in the state. I played in the Shriners Bowl for football and was all scholastic for basketball. But that was the first time that someone also really stood up to me and me realize because I was a good athlete, I just wasn't going to get away with anything. Because prior to that, I did. I passed
Right.
classes because I was a great athlete. And things of that nature. So having Ed and Jack O'Brien, who was that basketball coach in my life, really propelled me to be where I'm at today and doing this work.
Wait, can
Because
I
one of
ask
the
a quick question? So
yes,
when he cut you,
mhm.
where you're like, oh, I really do have to overhaul. Like, did it make you mad at him or did it make you change everything? Like, what was
So no, like for me, when he cut me, it was like whatever. It was like okay, whatever. Um, and there was an incident that happened that summer that kind of changed and made me look at the situation different. I put my family's life in jeopardy. Being involved in the streets. I was in a situation where I had my son and my girlfriend with me, and I had some words with some kids from a rival gang, and in that space, I put my family's life in jeopardy. And it was that moment when I realized that I had a decision to make. And I'm gonna walk you through that night. That night when I have that encounter, I know who they are, and my main priority is the safety of my family. So I'm like, let me get my family home. And during that time, I know who they are. I'm thinking about calling my boys and go handle the situation. But something plays in my mind. Do you want your son to grow up without a father like you did?
right? It kept
Do you
like
want your
going,
son to grow up
right?
without a father like you did? And that's something that the high school coach said to me when he took me out to eat one night, when people told him he should talk to me because I can help the program. So that stuck with me. And I called coach that night. And I promise you, it was probably about 1 o'clock in the morning.
Mhm.
And I said, Coach, I'm ready to change. And his words to me was, Shawn, don't BS me. And I said, no, I'm serious. Story I shared about my girlfriend and my son. That is my wife now. Me and my wife have been together for 28 years. We've been married for 20. So I'm blessed. We have three beautiful kids together. Shawn Jr., who is now 28. Shandon, who is on be 21 in a couple of months and is on a full basketball scholarship at Niagara University. And then our baby girl Sanai, who is 15, and she'll be turning 16 in a couple of months. I tell everyone she runs the house, get me.
That is incredible. That's
Yeah, so
incredible.
those experiences that really paved the way for me to be where I'm at today, running BAM, because after I graduated from college, um, I founded my own nonprofit mentoring organization called Diamond Educators Mentoring, which was also a youth development mentoring organization for young men of color. I was doing that for 20 plus years, partnering with the Boston Public Schools, providing mentoring services for, um, the toughest population to serve, the proven risk and at risk young men. So this is just my passion. I believe I truly know the power between a caring adult and a young person. And for me, it's about who's the next Shawn Brown? How do I continue to pay it forward and support them?
That's wonderful. So can you tell me a little bit about BAM and what you do for them?
Yes. So BAM is this amazing um, national evidence-based school-based counseling program for young boys of color. Predominantly for young men of color in grades 7 through 12. BAM has been proven to reduce violence and increase graduation rates for Black and Brown boys. We've had 2 randomized control studies that speak to that impact. BAM reduces violence by 50% for young men in the program, increasing graduation rates by 20%, and decreasing overall crime arrests by 35%. The study also shows for every dollar invested in BAM, there's a $30 return by just keeping our young men out the system. And this randomized control trial was performed by Chicago Crime Lab. So when
Wow.
you think about those numbers, there was a call to replicate the program across the country, and this was for
Yeah.
Chicago. So there was a call to replicate the program across the country, and it was a very competitive process. Boston was chosen as the first replication city. for a few reasons. One, the mayor and the district, the school district's commitment to supporting the program, but also the school district acknowledging the school to prison pipeline,
Yeah.
and working to dismantle it. So when you think about those numbers, it just made sense that Boston was the place. And then, last but not least, the founder loves Boston, so we had that. We had that.
Turns out he's like, we're going to Boston. Boston's really amazing.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
because of that, in 2017, the program was rolled out in Boston. And one of the things the mayor in Boston said is, we want the program, but the executive director has to be homegrown. And my name was one of the names that was thrown out there as someone they should look into, um, you know,
And you're
into,
homegrown.
yeah, absolutely, look into, to lead the program. And here I am, for going on 4 school years later, um, leading this national organization since the inception of BAM here in Boston. We've expanded to Seattle, LA, and most recently, our expansion has expanded internationally to London. So,
Whoa,
yeah.
that's
So,
cool.
we're currently serving, approximately 8,000 young men across the country. Um, so just exciting times to be a part of, this amazing program.
Yeah. And can you say a little bit about what I was so impressed with when I sat in on a circle, was that it was so encouraging and supportive and empowering, that the boys were empowering each other or calling each other out, that you weren't just checking in physically and emotionally, but spiritually too. And so if you could talk a little bit about some of the learning that you are kind of teaching them to be able to combat systemic racism and the bullshit they have to deal with. So
Ashe. No, great question. For us, BAM is really built around having our young men learn and internalize, six core values. And those six core values is integrity, accountability, positive anger expression, self-determination, respect for womanhood, and visionary goal settings. So our goal is to, work with young men to internalize those, and in turn, it helps them become better students and better members in their community. So when you talk about, what BAM provides for these young men, it's providing them a safe space to have conversations that they can't have in the classroom, that they're not having in the classroom.
right.
So BAM, again, the foundation of, we do this work in circles, where, one, it starts with us first hiring these amazing, brilliant men we call BAM counselors, who come with backgrounds in social work and clinical experience. And have lived experiences that are similar to the scholars and kings that they're working with. So we refer to our young men as kings and scholars. Um,
I love that.
Absolutely,
I
and
really love
it starts there. So, and after that, then each of these counselors are working with a cohort of 55 to 60 young men, and they break that down into cohorts of 10 to 12, scholars. And so a counselor run anywhere from 4 to 5 BAM groups a week. And our work is done in circles. And one of the reasons, the foundation of the circle, is that, BAM will be fun, safe, and challenging and respectful. So scholars know that. We start first by creating this safe container where scholars know that they can come in and have these conversations and know that it is a safe space. One of the reasons why we sit in circles is, we take it back to our ancestors, and before they would go out into battle, anything, they always just sat in circles and shared their emotions and feelings. And one of the reasons why we sit in circles is because it gives that no one man is above the group. We're all equal. So it's an opportunity for scholars to check in and share their emotions. One of our pillar or check-ins that we do, is a pies check-in, and that's checking in with our scholars. How are you feeling physically? What are you thinking about intellectually? Where are you at emotionally? And then the S is for, where are you at spiritually? What are you connected to? And in that space, scholars just to start to check in about, everything that you just talked about, from what's happening at home to what's happening in the world. We provide a safe space for our scholars to check in on, all the BS that's happening in the country, around the country, with, the racism that we see, the police brutality, and giving them a safe space to do that, because they're not able to do that in the classroom.
This is kind of going back to earlier in the conversation, but you were saying that you didn't really know what it was like to really be a man because your father wasn't around and you felt abandoned, right? Because he was choosing not to be around. And then you found these other kind of men who you were looking up to, and then it shifted for you. And I'm just curious, in all the shifting and everything you've gone through with your work with the kings and scholars, what would you say for you, like a man means? What does it mean to
Mhm.
be a man?
Wow, wow. That's a great question. And what I would say is, um, first, this journey of becoming a man is never ending. You're forever on this journey, or chasing this journey to become a man. So for me, I'm still learning what it means to become a man myself. And I think part of that journey, when I started to realize, um, this is when I joined BAM, and I just, sharing this is, um, like, I love BAM for what it does for our young kings and queens, but in a selfish way, I love BAM for what it's done for me. And here's what I mean by that. Um, and I get emotional, and I, talk about, it's one of the ways that BAM has helped me is getting in touch with my emotions and feelings. And 3.5 years ago, I went on this thing called Mankind Weekend, and it's a requirement for every man in BAM is that you go on this 3-day retreat, and it's a retreat of ruthless self-examination, is what we call it. And during this time, I had an opportunity to deal with all my baggage and trauma that I experienced in my life, because prior to 3.5 years ago, I didn't do that. I was guilty of saying that. Um, Mental health is not good to saying, but I was guilty of saying, or being a part of that stigma, that men don't cry, we're tough, you don't show emotions, and things of that nature. And it wasn't until 3.5 years ago, when I went on this mankind retreat, that I started to deal with that. I dealt with the daddy wound of my father not being in my life. Prior to that, I didn't. And the analogy I like to use is like, if you have a Pepsi or bottle, and you shake it up and you take the top off, what happens? It explodes.
Yeah.
That was me. That was me 3.5 years ago, when I went on this mankind weekend. I suppressed all those feelings. My wife would say to me, you're this amazing father, you're this amazing mentor, um, but you can be a better husband. And I would get frustrated by that, because I didn't know what she meant. We have a beautiful home, beautiful kids, but I was neglecting her emotionally. I had this hard surface, and I'm the patriarch of my family, not just my immediate family, my entire family. Whenever there's a need, everyone comes to Shawn. Who does Shawn go to when he's in need and he needs? And I never, had that. And it wasn't until I started this mankind journey that I got in touch with that. I tell people, Kimmy, I cried more in the past 2 years than I have my entire life.
I believe that.
One of the first things that I had to do after my mankind weekend was come home and say to my wife, I'm sorry, I get it, I apologize. And now, I know what you were talking about. She said you should seek counseling. You need counseling. I would say, I'm not crazy. I don't need counseling. I'm good. Um, and it was after the experience, like, BAM and counseling has, next to having my kids and getting married, my mankind weekend has been the most impactful thing in my life, Kimmy. And I
That's
say that because,
incredible.
again, I'm in a beautiful place, man, and my emotions, and being able to be vulnerable and have conversations with my wife that I wasn't able to have, to be open to seeing a therapist, and going to, therapy. Like, it's just changed my life, and it's beautiful. So I say that, um, to say, like, BAM is amazing. BAM is amazing, and every man, that comes through BAM has to go through that experience. So for me, it's, it showed me what it means to be a man, and that's what it is being vulnerable,
Yeah.
is being caring, and knowing that you never fully become that. This is You're always learning as we go. I'm learning from my
It's
scholars
a
every day.
process, right, of
It's
the
a process.
becoming. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm learning from my scholars, and I'm learning from my mentors, and it's just a beautiful place to be in now, and to be here. And that's after I've been on this earth for 45 years, and that experience just happened when I was 41. So
Mm.
to give that to scholars now, at this age, I just I think back to what my life would be like, if I had something like BAM when I was in high school. I'm fortunate that I had Ed come into my life, and I look at Ed now, and I'm big on my faith, and believe in God, and know Ed was put in my life for a reason, and the trials and tribulations that I faced, were for a reason, because it makes me the man that I am today. It's
Yeah.
helped me become who I am today. But Ed was that BAM counselor. Ed was that BAM counselor when I was in high school. When I think about our core values, Ed instilled those into me when I was in high school. What BAM has done is define those. So now I know, and I'm thinking like, wow, this was what Ed was teaching me. Ed
Right.
taught
This is
me
what it
integrity.
was. Right.
Absolutely, Ed taught me, doing the right thing. Integrity means doing the right thing when no one's looking.
Mm.
He talked about accountability when he was telling me you're accountable for your actions. And intended or unattended. He talked about self-determination when he spoke about what's your plan in overcoming adversity. Positive anger expression. He would tell me you have leadership qualities. Won't you take that energy and channel it to something positive? Respectful woman. He modeled that with how he interacted with his wife. And then the visionary goal settings. When he said that quote, those who fail to plan to fail. That's what that was. So I look back now in retrospect, I was like, wow, I was a BAM student, so
Yeah. It was like he put you on the course. He's like, this is where you're going.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
BAM is just it's an amazing, it's an amazing program. Like I said, not only for our scholars but for the men that are in this group. We talk about the parallel process, and we go through everything that we put our scholars through.
Yeah.
We don't ask of anything of our scholars that we're not willing to do ourselves. From the curriculum, they go through, we go through the same curriculum. We receive over 300 hours of training, from our BAM Training Academy, which is headed up by the founder, Tony D. So it's just, I'm blessed. I'm living the dream. I tell people every day, Kimmy, I don't work a day in my life because I love doing what I'm doing.
I
Um,
love it, Ashe.